Welcome back to the Midnight Gospel, where we fall asleep to stories slower than time itself. Here, we do not hurry, and nothing is asked of you. The night settles heavy around old walls, the hush before the lamps are trimmed. Listen, somewhere outside the gates before the crowd a disciple wakes. There are no crowds tonight, no sermons echoing on the wind. The air is soft, cool. You can almost feel the dust settling. This is a gentle place, caught between yesterday and whatever tomorrow is waiting to become. Stillness grows in corners by the empty basket, along a bending olive branch under the gentle ache of the sky. You can close your eyes. Let your jaw unclench. There's nothing to hold right now and nothing to lose. The only thing that matters is the breath moving in and out, impossibly slow, always returning. In this hour, the sacred feels ordinary, and the ordinary feels like it's been blessed. I am just a witness here, someone folding linen at dusk, listening to the fullness behind silence. Holiness is something you catch from the corner of your mind, like a stray note heard from the courtyard. The story waits. It never minds if you drift away. All through the house, shadows slide quietly from the door to the window. Crickets murmur. The night listens with you tonight. We remember a sky not yet written, ancient stars just beginning to echo against the deep. This is an invitation back to the beginning, on a warm, dark hillside where Abraham once looked up and the world became wide and older than sorrow. He asked for nothing and still felt full. You are invited to, no need to understand, just rest under the hush of old constellations. Imagine the world before maps, before wishes. Only the slow hush and the sky carefully pricked open, one soft light at a time. Let this moment stretch. Let the night be wide enough for your tired heart. Even the wind is slow now, moving between fig leaves, brushing the ancient stones with a gentleness that never writes its name. No one notices the prayer, but it is heard. You don't need to stay awake for the story. It will stay awake for you before anyone speaks. The world is already awake, quiet as a heartbeat under wool. I lie at the edge of this forgotten camp, half dreaming on my mat, the reeds beneath me still holding the night's cold. My eyes open before my body uncurls. The pale hush is unbroken, even the air hesitates. Somewhere beyond my arm, a servant breathes slow beside the last shreds of a fire. Breath and then another, curling like white thread into the gray where shadows wait. Abraham stirs gently, not to wake the others, but the earth shifts in its own way, honest and patient. He says nothing. No one rushes. The ground beneath us feels older than worry. Dust moves by itself, pretending to be wind. A bowl near my feet rolls a little. Someone must have set it right out of habit long before the sun. A sibling coughs, small and kind, wrapped in woven things meant for warmth but not comfort. We all do what we can. There's no hurry. The night still lingers, stretching itself thin before letting go. Even this silence is holy. Somewhere farther, a donkey brays but softly, as if it remembers to be gentle while the stars are still out. I count the animals by their sounds alone, 2 sheep stirring, a goat who flutters his ears against the dark, maybe 3 more beside the tent poles. The world is built of these small signs, nothing more urgent than sleep half left. Let this moment stretch. I close my hand around a bit of straw. It's rough, ordinary. The mat presses a pattern onto my cheek. We are as still as we can be before bread is broken, before feet wander or plans are named. The morning asks for nothing, only to be noticed, not solved. Abraham sits up, folding his knees close, eyes somewhere between thought and sky. He looks as though he's waiting for someone or no one at all. The quiet is enough for now. A servant brushes ash from his sleeve. Someone else moves a water jug upright, careful not to spill. We do these things because they are needed, not because they are remembered. Even the fire's breath holds steady, the stars thin out above, barely more than dust themselves. They're a promise, but not a loud one. Someone said Abraham counted them once. Maybe he still does under his breath, or maybe it was just a story told to help the young ones sleep. This morning, all numbers are silent. God watches from a distance that doesn't measure in steps. You can let your eyes close if you want. No one speaks of journeys or promises or prayers waiting in the dark. These things settle themselves, like water finding what's lowest. The earth waits under our mats, cold but steady. We learn the day in pieces, first a sound, then a shape, then a breath. Sometimes when I listen, it feels like the camp is one body, resting, not alone. The silence widens as the first edge of light finds us here. Every moment is small, soft, left as it was found. No one asks what time it is. The night becomes morning so slowly it feels like memory. Abraham doesn't rush. The fire will be built up again. Bread will be torn. Animals will be led beyond sight until only the sound of their bells remains. But for now, nothing begins. Let this quiet hold you, like sleep that never ended. The world moves at a pace even the heart envies. The Lord hears prayers not spoken and sees what we leave unnamed. I press my cheek to the mat and breathe out, slow, steady. The stars fade, but the promise does not. No one noticed the prayer, but it was heard. The sky is barely awake when Abraham stands at the edge of the cistern. The hush is soft enough to hear a donkey's yawn, the low slap of its tail on an empty bucket. He does not hurry. The water is still traveling, taking its time over stone, gathering cool from the night. Abraham's hands move into it, slow, careful, catching the first chill of morning on his skin. The water greets him with a quiet slosh, gentle like a friend who doesn't need to speak. A servant is nearby, folding linen, touching each cloth like it remembers a different dream. Her song is quieter than the wind but steadier than it, the tune curling around the creak of a wooden bucket, the fabric sighing in her lap. Sometimes she stops, kneeling in the dust, watching her hands more than the horizon. Let this moment stretch. There are no questions on the air tonight, just the breath of a day beginning, slow and simple. Abraham bends at the waist, letting drops slip silently from his fingertips. The dust is stubborn, but the water is patient. His feet shift in the dirt. The thud of his heel sends a tiny cloud up, too small for anyone to notice except the smallest ants. Even this silence is holy. It's easy to feel invisible in morning's early light. Abraham has no answers and the land doesn't press him for them. Above, the sky holds its own secrets, pinned between branches where a bird steps once, twice, then stills. Abraham lifts water to his brow, pressing away the sleep that lingers at the edge of his vision. Each splash is a promise that the night is leaving slowly. A breeze stirs the thin linen drying behind them, snapping it softly, just enough to be heard if you're listening for nothing else. The sun, barely more than an idea, warms the top of the clay wall. Most of the village is dreaming still. The scent of wet earth rises with every bucket caught under Abraham's fingernails, stubborn as hope. He asked for nothing and still felt full. The servant tucks the last cloth beneath her arm and glances his way. No one speaks. The world is saying everything it needs, one moment at a time. A donkey steps closer. Its ear flicks at a fly. Somewhere, a rooster thinks about morning, then decides to wait. The rhythm carries him like it always does. Wash the hands, rinse the brow, let the day begin, but never rush it. Even miracles, Abraham learned, begin with morning dust washed from the skin. The night listens with you. There are mornings that feel like unspooling yarn, soft and slow, each hour quiet as wool. Today was that sort of morning. Under the woven awning near the house, just beyond the place where the sun hits too bright, the old woman sat with the basin. The dough still needed quieting, she said, though it had been resting, covered with a faded cloth. I watched her from the edge of the courtyard. Her brow, told by years, stayed gentle in the silence. Her sleeves rolled, hands dusted. She pressed the dough down again, drawing its breath out slowly, as if coaxing a child to sleep. Every motion was slow, warm with patience. Some dough sticks, some dough shies away from shape, and you learn after a lifetime of mornings how to turn the stubbornness into something soft. She pressed her palm flat, then lifted, pressed again. The muscle in her arm did not tremble. Each round grew quieter, as if the day itself muted to match her pace. Outside, the wheat field shimmered under the beginning sun. All the shouting, the market, the animals, far away. Here, only the hush of flour, the rhythm of hands. If dough could dream, it might dream of this, the gentle flattening, the weight of a palm smoothing its doubts, a rest so deep that nothing is asked, nothing answered. Everything left is simple. The dough in her hands rested the way a soul does sometimes, after long days, when nothing is required but to be held, to be softened by kindness, pressed just enough to let the air go. A child crouched near the stones, not watching, only gathering, flint for the fire. He turned the pieces over, tapping each on his thumbnail, searching for the right ones. The spark comes from the cleanest edge, he whispered once, not to her but to himself. He held a handful, maybe 5, maybe 7. No hurry. He stacked them in a line, then scattered them when the line no longer pleased him. In the corner, a goat nosed along a fence where vines had curled, nibbling the tenderest leaves. The leaves twitched and bent. Every so often the woman's gaze drifted to the slow, spirited clouds above. She did not count the minutes. The sky was full, and so was she. Somewhere behind the wall the air had the scent of willow bark, new and green. The morning waited with her, nothing much happening and all the more sacred for it. Abraham passed by then, though few took note. Tall, leaning on his staff, he asked nothing, only dipped his head beneath the awning's edge. His eyes traced the fire ring, stones still cold, ash unbothered by wind. The woman did not break her rhythm. He moved on, soft-footed as shadow. You would not remember this as a story, only as the softest interruption in a day. The world hovered there, half begun. Let this moment stretch. I watched her now press the dough flatter, just so. Her fingers curled inward, knuckles gentle. The way she pressed, steady, certain, it made me think of how quiet prayers feel when you say nothing, but the wanting settles down inside you anyway. She shaped each round with care, then laid it aside. Cloth after cloth, she covered them. The doe exhaled, content to wait. Even this silence is holy. Nothing was ready yet. Not the doe, not the child, not the sun. The fire stones had not been laid. Shadows shifted from pale to silver pale. Swallows stitched themselves along the beam above, not singing. A stone cup sweat with water near her elbow. She sipped, set it back, wiped her thumb across the rim as if calming the surface too. Nothing rushed her. In the distance, a neighbor called for a lamb, but the sound faltered before it reached us. Here the air barely moved. Only the bread would warm soon, eventually. Let the day go slowly. Sometimes, when her wrists paused, she let her head droop, as if listening to something beyond the yard. Maybe the hush between sparrow calls, or that feeling when you wake just before dawn and everything is gentle but also expectant. The flour on her hand stayed white as moon powder. She patted her apron, faint lines tracing the cloth where time had folded it again and again. A beetle crossed the dust beside the basin, indifferent to all, its steady progress unnoticed. The child arranged his flints in a circle, lips moving in silent count. Underneath the rhythm, the waiting, the breathing, I found myself growing still. No lesson pressing close, just an ordinary day in God's long memory. The world was not awakened by miracles here, only held in smallness. The sun and air and bread all kept each other's time. The doe continued to rest, just as a soul settles into the kind of sleep that feels like mercy. When she pressed it down, it didn't fight, it pooled into her palm, yielding with a sigh as if saying, I am here, nothing more is needed of me, not now. The quiet work of peace, round by round. If you need to sleep, let this softness cover you. If you want to stay awake, that's fine too. Someone, the woman maybe, will tend the doe until it's truly ready. The child will find enough stones. The fire will spark, later or now. Abraham will walk past, never interrupting the holy hush. The sun moves slow as a blessing. Nothing else is required of us. The day will bake this bread, plain and unleavened, tasting of hands and patience and dust. It will be enough. You can rest. The night listens with you. Abraham passed by, far enough that his voice came as dust, not sound. There were two with him. One held a water skin that looked heavier each hour. The other leaned, pausing to move a stone from his sandal. No one hurried. The sun pressed everything flat and slow. Abraham watched the sky as if he'd forgotten whether it was morning or near evening. The path, if it was a path, was just a pale thread curling through fields of old grass. Sometimes the grass bent from the sideways wind. And so they continued. Nothing in the world seemed urgent. The village was far behind, just a shape remembered by its smoke. When a goat wandered close, glancing up with tired patience, Abraham stopped. He didn't speak to the animal. He only blinked, quiet in the heat, letting the goat find its place among weeds. And so they continued. One companion dropped behind. His feet scraped at patches of dry scrub. The sandals were coming apart along the heels, but he walked as if the world expected nothing more from him, just a steady movement forward. And so, let this moment stretch. Sometimes they passed a thing left behind, a twisted bit of rope or the faint circle where a campfire had been. Abraham looked at nothing but paused anyway. Maybe a memory was breathing there. The other men waited, breathing beside him. The silence was the softest thing. Even this silence is holy. The sun drifted lower but never quite left their backs. There were no signs, only small clues. the pattern of stones, the cigarette smell of hot earth, a patch where wild thyme struggled in dust. Each detail fell into the next, and so they continued. A crow called and then forgot them. Abraham's eyes met the horizon, where the land curled back onto itself. No one asked when to stop. When they slowed, it was only for a sip of water, careful not to waste. The water tasted of clay, and still it filled him. No one noticed the prayer, but it was heard. The other men spoke sometimes, a word at a time, pointing at cloud shapes or wondering if the goats belonged to someone nearby. But mostly they listened to their own steps, each footfall soft, rhythmic, and so they continued. Time folded over them, gentle and strange. I watched until their shapes were puzzle pieces against the far line of hills. The dust behind them curled upwards, then settled. In the distance, Abraham reached for nothing, hands plain and open. The night listens with you all day, only walking, only breathing, nothing to rush. Every footstep a kind of prayer. And so they continued. Sometimes when the sun lifted high and the road grew long, we would find a thorn tree, its shadow thin but steady enough for resting. That day I sat a little apart, stretching my legs into the hush where no one needed to speak. Abraham did not look for attention. He traced slow fingers along the edge of his pouch, leather grown soft from years of use. When he opened it, a sweet scent rose, clinging to the air. Figs, dried and tangled, their skin wrinkled and shining like old hands. He broke them with care. They didn't tear quietly. A little pull, a sound almost like soft cloth coming loose. Even the smallest piece shined with its own sugar. He gave without words. He asked for nothing and still felt full. The fig was cool and sticky in my palm, tugging against my fingers when I separated flesh from skin. My teeth pressed in, and for a moment the fruit held tight, a gentle resistance, before yielding, giving up its sweetness slow as afternoon heat. It was not bursting. It was not loud. The taste lingered, sugar and earth, a simple plenty. No one hurried. Crumbs pressed into the soft lines of my hand. I licked away the syrup, faint and brown as the shade itself. Abraham chewed softly, eyes on a pebble near his sandal. We made nothing holy, but nothing felt lacking. A bee circled around the figs, floating up, looking for something bold, a blossom, a thrill, but found only us with open hands and quiet thoughts. It left us there, untouched. Let this moment stretch, no blessing was said. Still the air felt tender as if listening. Sometimes it felt like silence was the prayer. Sometimes it felt like chewing was enough and God would hear that too. There is no striving here, just sweet flesh between teeth. Just the dust cooling my ankles. Just the world resting with us, holding its breath. Each bite seemed to last longer the less I tried to finish it. Grit clung to the fruit where it had brushed the pouch, and the sugar on my tongue almost stilled my thoughts. The shade was poor, but it kept the air from burning. The thorn tree gave its little, and somehow it was just what we needed. We did not thank the tree. We did not call the figs sacred. The day ran its long course, and the earth turned, and that quiet moment swallowed up the world's rush. Even this silence is holy. We stayed there till the bees stopped their searching and the shadows slipped away. I thought of nothing but the softness in my stomach and the kind stretch of my legs. There was no lesson, no sign, only chewing, only air. The night listens with you. There was a hollow place not far from where our tents rested, just past the hush of sleeping animals and the brittle gold grass that bent when the wind grew tired. Some would call it a well, but I thought of it more as something waiting to be remembered. In the cool light of late morning, a fringe of shadow slipped over the stones. Abraham was already there, folded quietly beside the broken circle. His face didn't turn when I came near, nor did he speak or shape the air with the start of any plan. He had water in his bag. Still, he sat where the old well yawns and watched. A donkey shifted, grumbling at flies, but Abraham didn't mind. At his feet lay two ropes. One was thin enough for light to cut through, the other curled and hopelessly tangled, forgotten in the pale dust. The clay jar he'd set down beside them was chipped. It leaned, wary of its own balance. For a while nothing needed doing, not even a pause for prayer. The air hummed, low and even, keeping company with stones and slack rope. I stood beside the well, the brim of my sleeve gathering warm air. Once I glanced at Abraham's hands. He pressed his palm flat to the ground, slow and easy, tracing circles in the dust. Each fingertip left memories there that only the wind would remember. Let this moment stretch you far off. A pair of sparrows weighed the silent stones with their restlessness. Abraham only inclined his head, never reaching out to scatter them, never naming their visit. The sun moved without hurry, slicing through the tangled rope with quiet gold patience. The jar did not roll or crack. It simply sat. A shadow inched across Abraham's feet. He watched it lengthen, a silent guest arriving from nowhere. There was something kind and empty in that shadow, something that waited but didn't wish for anything. Even this silence is holy. You might think a man would fix what's ragged before him, smooth the rope, steady the jar, bring water up. But here in the shade, with the old well holding its quiet, none of us moved to mend the day. The earth could be shy sometimes with its gifts. Not broken, just slow. I knelt nearby, feeling the stubble of grass underneath my palms. Abraham, for a long while, watched the horizon, where hills blurred into the sky. He looked as if he could sit through dusk and never need more than that. Each breath from him was gentle and low, rising through his shoulders, carrying nothing urgent. He didn't search the dust for answers, nor did he chase away the shadows. Let this moment drift on the air, nothing drawn from the well today and nothing lacking. Cicadas murmured. Abraham's thumb moved slow across the stones, spreading dust into smooth arcs. It was not a plan, not a map, just a rhythm left behind as time softened. I watched his hand, thinking maybe the earth liked its rest too. Maybe waiting here was good as any answer. Sometimes I wondered if God watched us this way still, slow, hands in the dust, not fixing what needn't be fixed, just near. The night listens with you. Someone's cloak fluttered in the wind, and Abraham smiled, almost not at all. He drew a lazy line with his finger, then left it there for the coolness to claim. There was peace in letting something remain unfinished. The air between us loosened, as if the world had forgotten to rush forward and in forgetting found its rest. Let your breath move as quiet as this dust. We listened, not to water or words, but to the great hush that follows a man sometimes after too many journeys. No one needed to fill the jar or mend the rope. Even the tangled knots could wait another day. The old well, frayed, silent, held all our questions and none of our needs. Even this desolate hush has its cradle. A moth drifted through the sunlight and Abraham's hand stilled, palm broad and open on the dirt. He looked up, only for a moment, as if measuring the space between earth and stars. I wondered if he remembered the time he counted them with God, how each star hung on his promise, even when the night was slow and the well remained empty. Let this stillness cover you like a wool cloak. Nothing drew Abraham toward speech. He had water in his bag and comfort enough beside him. The only offering he made was quiet, dust gathered beneath his hand, rope unknotted only by time, a jar half believing in its own worth. Even the animals had the wisdom to lower their heads, letting the land pause with them. A single sheep pressed its ear to the ground, listening. Abraham's other hand settled against his knee, patient, learning nothing except how to wait. Let this pause be permission, not to do, but to be. There are days when a well runs dry for a reason. Not everything broken begs to be mended. Some buckets stay empty. Some knots leave their stories for tomorrow. Even the sun, bloated and gentle, knew better than to judge the forgotten well. Abraham smoothed the dust with his open palm, shaping nothing, solving nothing. It was the only thing that mattered, and maybe the only thing God had asked for, to be present, not busy. I listened, and in the breath between moments I felt fullness drift in, slow and sure, like water beneath stone. He asked for nothing, and still felt full. Let your eyes close, if they wish. You are already part of the silence that waits here. Genesis 15:5 is softly remembered. He took him outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your offspring be." But today we do not count. We just wait beside what needs no answer. Even this is sacred. The stone doesn't shine in the sun, not today. It's rough and worn, leaning where the shelter's shadow falls when afternoon turns easy. Abraham sits beside it, old wool over his knees, his hand finding the shape of letters he doesn't say out loud. It's cooler where his fingers touch, grainy with dust that gathers, blows away, settles again. He could close his eyes and still know every curve, soft edges where hope once pressed deeper. His thumb lingers at the end of a line, as if waiting for a word to find him. There's nothing loud here. The air smells like earth after waiting all morning for dew that never came. A child circles near the stone, quiet, tracing Hebrew letters in the sand with a crooked stick. The lines don't stay long, even for a breath. The wind finds them almost before they are made, smoothing the past away, grain by grain. Some goats graze down in the low grass, tails flicking at whatever flies brave this heat. The sound is soft, somehow farther off than the distance. Abraham watches. He remembers how many words he's worn out, how many prayers he shaped only in his mind, how none of them ever needed to last. The stone remembers, he thinks, even when he forgets. Sometimes his hand falls still, palm pressed flat, waiting. There's no plan. He isn't reciting anything, not asking or promising, just here. Not thinking so much as resting beside something that outlived his worry. God seems close this way, like a quiet shadow in afternoon sun. There is nothing to prove or keep. Let this moment stretch. Somewhere a bird lands, then leaps, pecking for a crumb. The child's finger moves gently, leaving another letter for the wind. Abraham doesn't teach or correct, only watches. Everything feels fragile and enough. He remembers again the stars scattered above him one night, how God's voice felt heavier than spoken words. Count the stars if you can. He never tried. He didn't need to. The meaning always finds its way with or without the scribbles. The sky starts to gray at one thin edge of the world. The stone feels cooler, still holding the heat of the day. Abraham drags a little line through dust by his sandal, not a letter, not a sign, just a mark that means nothing to anyone but him. Even this silence is holy. The child comes close and sits, humming without a tune, not asking for anything. Abraham likes the company. Sometimes God is here when no one's talking. He feels it as a kind of fullness, a breath that never leaves. He asked for nothing and still felt full. The night listens with you, the day was a blue hush. Even the air moved slowly, as if it, too, needed a place to sit down and rest. Near the edge of the shelter I saw her, the older woman with her round basket and a shallow clay bowl. She sat on a woven mat, cross-legged, sleeves rolled up, olive pits and leaves in little heaps around her palms. Soft sun filtered through the woven reeds above, dappling the ground, and she just kept working, patient, hands quiet, sorting what others left behind. Nobody hurried. Nobody called out. Sometimes stillness gathers, pooling in these small corners at the end of a long day. I walked close, careful not to step on her shadows. I'd carried water that afternoon, my feet crusted with dry dust, arms heavy and loose. Most days there was always something to fetch or grind or mend. That was the shape of life, the shape of faith. It happened in the little things people don't remember. She looked up and saw me. There was almost a smile at the edge of her mouth. I knelt, not really to help, more to keep company, the way you stand long at the gate with a neighbor, saying nothing that matters and everything that does. She pushed a small pile of olive pits toward me, and for a while we sorted together, pits from leaves, leaves from twigs. The wind grazed the edge of the shelter. I could hear our breathing. Hers was slower than mine, measured like counting heartbeats after a prayer. Let this moment stretch. The world can be loud, but here it was all routine. The olive pits felt dry and polished, smoothed by last year's hands. Each click in the bowl was a kind of rhythm, a way of keeping time. The sun slipped lower and the flies grew quiet. Someone stirred lentils by the fire far away. It didn't matter how many we sorted. Plenty rolled from our fingers back to the dust. Sometimes I wondered if God counted them too, not tallying, just noticing. She hummed once, not a song, just the way air sounds when it leaves the nose and mouth. I managed to match her silence. She did not need words. I did not offer them. The leaves had a green smell, sharp and clear, reminding me of the fields outside where I once dragged my feet as a child, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick. Even this silence is holy. She touched my sleeve, not grabbing, just brushing away some flecks of chaff. When I looked up, she met my gaze, and for a blink her eyes were softer than the twilight. A silent smile, warm and fragile, passed between us. Just company, just the right amount for now. People forget how long a day can be out here, how every hour opens its hands and pours out more waiting, more patience, more quiet. Some of the younger ones wanted stories of bright stars and promises, of descendants too many to count. But these bits, the rolling of pits, the wind rising, the good tired ache in old knees, felt like enough. The night listens with you, we kept at it, my rhythm faltering, hers steady. I thought of Abraham's words, sometimes heard through the thin walls of tents, about the sky and counting, how God asked him to look up and trust what could not be touched. But here, looking down, I found it easier to believe in the small worth of things. A leaf for the bowl, a pit for the basket, hands for the work, breath measured and slow, more footsteps padded past, never stopping long. Someone dropped a clay cup nearby. She barely glanced up. The sun edged closer to the hills, turning everything gold then brown, softening even the stones. She closed her eyes for a moment, sun on her face, as if gathering warmth for the cold that would tiptoe into night. Let this moment stretch. You could almost forget who you were, scribbling poems in the dust or reciting old names under your breath. Sometimes when the world was this quiet, you remembered things you never spoke aloud. The way your mother's hands worked bread, the way a brother once wove palm leaves into shapes only children found interesting. Still we sorted, still the wind moved, still nothing rushed us. When the bowl was full, she made no gesture of delight, just emptied it, shook out the leaves, and started again. Abraham passed by, stepping softly, stopping for just a fold in the hour. He nodded, a greeting or a blessing, and knelt near her. He did not speak. He just rested his broad hands on his knees, looking out at the thin grass, letting the quiet gather like dew. Let even this task be enough. The older woman offered him a pit. Abraham smiled, turning it once between his fingers as if remembering how everything starts small: seeds, hopes, faith. Together, the three of us listened. To the wind, to each other, to a presence too gentle to name. I wondered if, when Abraham looked up at the stars, it felt like this: eyes steady, heart quiet, no need to own the sky, just counting what slips through your hands. No one hurried us. No one needed more than a bowl of sordid pits and the low, steady hush of people who knew how to wait. Leaves in the wind, shadows lengthening, crickets beginning to speak. There were no lessons, no teaching, only time itself, sitting cross-legged, sorting what could be kept from what could be let go. Even this silence is worth something. Even this moment, almost forgotten, is seen. We finished before there was nothing left, because even in the sorting there is always more. Abraham rose first, brushing off his robe. He nodded again, gentle and tired, and walked into the long dusk. The older woman breathed out, heavy and full, and looked to me, smiling, a little wider now, lines crinkling at her eyes. I stood slowly, legs tingling. I gathered the emptied bowls, set them near her mat. She patted my hand once, firm and grateful. I lingered just a little, watching the sky deepen, a shade of blue I could not name. The world will forget these moments, but small hands remember. Let the night hold you, gentle and slow. Nothing needs finishing. Nothing is wasted. Every pit sorted, a prayer folded quietly between earth and heaven heard, even in silence, especially in silence. Soft wind moved the edges of the tents. The fabric barely rustled, just enough to remind me that night was close. I watched Abraham from far enough away that I could have been anybody, a shadow, a worker, just someone folding a tunic for tomorrow. He stood out by the nearly empty fire circle, sandals pressed into the dust, arms loosely at his sides. He did not call for anyone. The sheep had long stopped making noise. They settled in small, huddled knots, looking drowsy, breathing quietly. Sometimes it seemed as if the animals recognized the coming hush better than people could. The sky faded gently from tired blue to something deeper. The longest part was waiting to see the first tiny glimmer return. out beyond the old stones, where day never truly stayed. I wiped my hands on the edge of my robe and tried not to stare, but everyone was drifting a little toward the night. Far away, a child asked for fire. Someone else yawned, missing nothing except the quiet. Someone always has their mind on bread for the next morning, coals for sunrise, water that must be fetched too early. Even now, most people didn't notice Abraham standing so still. Let this moment stretch. I think of the years we have watched these evenings come and go. Some say stars love repetition, that they return on their own time, never rushed. They blinked slowly, one by one, first above the black line of the hills, later scattered across the empty dark, each one a quiet thought from the distant past. Abraham whispered nothing, but I believe his heart spoke in ways mine couldn't hear. He watched the sky as if reading a scroll that only he could unroll. Still, his shoulders didn't stiffen with hope or burden. He just stood there, let the chill of the night find him. Whatever he remembered, it looked gentle and private. The first star appeared, almost pretending to be nothing at all. Then another, above the sheepfold, and one more near the broken well. They blinked slowly, one by one. Their smallness made them precious. Their distance made them safe. Dust rose beneath my heels as I finished gathering fraying cloth, tucking the edges of a tunic under my arm as quietly as I could. No one called out. The camp kept its soft rhythm. Water skins stacked upright, sandals paired by the door, spoons resting in shallow bowls of lentils. If there was a holy moment, no one pointed it out. The fire's last coals glowed, but no hands came to stir them. Smoke drifted, thin and gray, out into the pasture. I touched the rim of my sleeve, smoothing a crease. The simple act of making ready for night felt like prayer, without any words. The stars kept on returning, blinking, blinking, one by one. Even this silence is holy. Most of the children fell asleep early, faces shiny with the dust of play. Their breathing made a small, sweet hum behind the tent wall. Someone told a story quietly, a birthday or a goat lost and found. Nobody tried to teach a lesson. Laughter was gentle, easy to miss among the crickets. Let this moment stretch. I remembered early days, before I could tell one star from another. My mother said the sky was a blanket God shared with us. By morning, she said, he folded the corners back so we could see the day. No one hurried. Abraham remained there, watching, his chin up in the cool dark. I wondered if his arms felt tired, remembering old journeys, steps across dusty valleys, or if, looking up, he counted regrets and small joys, not just stars. It is easy to forget older people have questions, too. The horizon was nearly black, but the world felt gentle. Somewhere far off, frogs began to sing, and the night listened with you. A neighbor pressed cloth to her mouth, holding in a cough. A baby turned on a mat. A bowl clinked in the quiet, but nothing disturbed what was growing overhead. Through the gaps above the tent, the stars blinked in, a few more, then another, and always they came back slower than you'd think. No one noticed the prayer, but it was heard. I do not know for sure what Abraham saw in that sky. He asked for nothing and still felt full. Sometimes the world feels too wide for small dreams or safe for big ones. But here, between pulses of night wind, I thought maybe God listens best to the quiet ones, the people who would rather stand with the dust than the crowd. Our ears grew accustomed to the hush. Bodies made peace with the cold. I slid a stone over the mouth of the half-empty jar, checked that our smallest lamp would last until dawn. Across the camp, Abraham finally turned, letting the starlight fall behind him, walking slowly as if every footstep weighed the years. Even in that, nothing felt lost. Each part of the evening touched another. They blinked slowly. One by one, I finished folding the last piece of cloth. I watched the sky one more time, not for a sign, just for the rhythm. The pattern old as breath, the promise never shouted, only shown. Let this moment stretch, I thought again, letting the edges blur, the first stars return undisturbed. Still, safe, small and enough. The lamp is small, shaped by a careful thumb. Its wick soaks up oil, waiting to be touched by fire. I press its belly with my palm, feeling the roughness of old clay. There is a hush here, held like wool against the quiet. Abraham sleeps at the back wall. His breath drifts in and out, slower than the lamplight. I tuck the linens closer to his chin. The fold has become smooth from many nights, from hands folding, smoothing, waiting. The air is gentle, thick with warmth. If I move, wool brushes gently against my ankle, a sound softer than a whisper. Nothing else stirs. I sit and let the heaviness settle, the kind that makes even stillness feel full. The roof above us sags a little, pressed by stars. There is nothing sharp here, only flannel shadows and corners where the light doesn't reach. My knees ache, but in the kind of way that tells you home is close. I hear Abraham's breath change, lost in a dream I cannot see. Beyond the tent's flap, the goat's bell gives a hollow clink. Then silence widens again. I wish for nothing. The lamp's flame sends trembling shapes over fur-lined walls. My hand rests on a folded cloth mended so many times there is no original thread left. The weaving is its own prayer, slow, unnoticed, faithful. I look around. The basket of lentils sits where I left it at noon. A little pile of fig pits swept together waits for sweeping again. Even the pitcher, empty now, is cool to the touch. My world, clay, thread, breath, sleep, is small and wrapped in hush. And still I feel watched over. Not by eyes, but by a quiet that listens back. Let this moment stretch. The lamp glows. Abraham's shoulders rise and fall beneath his linen. Remembering the promise as countless as stars, he said, "But under this roof there is only one flame, one body sleeping, and much later another body waiting for morning. There is no hurry in this hour. The oil will last until it doesn't. The night comes anyway. Even this silence is holy. Sometimes I trace circles in the dust with one finger, or I hum so low even the lamp can't hear. My chores are finished. My prayers mostly said. The linen softens. I tuck my feet beneath the edge of a mat. Living is slow work. Stillness fills its tiny bowls, one after the next. He asked for nothing and still felt full. The breeze enters the tent and carries the smell of grass. You can almost hear the moon's slow path. I close my eyes but stay awake a while longer, holding the quiet. The Lord measures our days but also our nights, the plain, forgettable ones where the lamp is lit by waiting hands, for no one except the darkness and the one who shaped the dark. The night listens with you. No one noticed the prayer, but it was heard. The world grows quieter as I gather worn linens. No rush. Each fold waits for the next one. In the corner, a sandal leans against its pair, dust settling around it the way evening settles on the hills. Tonight, the fire outside has turned to ash. The others are inside, shapes under their blankets, breath soft and slow. I walk to the doorway, careful not to wake the goat who dreams in the straw. The field is darker now. Every stalk is still, listening for something, though nothing calls. The air smells like earth and wool, the way it always does at the end of a day. Above, the sky opens wide, black but not empty. The stars don't shine, not really. They wait, they stay. It feels like they are more patient than time itself. The sky does not sing or weep. It holds. It remembers what I forget. There are no thunderbolts, no voices rolling over the hills. Only my breathing, slow and quiet, it's enough. I lie back onto the grass, a folded cloak beneath my head, rough but worn soft. I do not count the stars. They have always been here. They will not leave while I sleep. My prayer is quiet. No words really, just hopes in the hollow of my chest, offered in the space between heartbeats. I let each breath be something God hears if He is near, if He is waiting too. Stillness